the imperial guards discovered him cowering in the deserted villa's wine cellar, gripping a tiny vial of poison in his shaking hand. This wasn't a mere criminal or defiant rebel. This was Sporus, scarcely 20, once Rome's empress, poised to end his life rather than face the new emperor's gruesome plans for him in the Colosseum. To grasp why death felt like salvation compared to his fate, we must rewind 3 years to when a deranged, grief-stricken emperor first saw a teenage boy who mirrored his deceased wife. What unfolds isn't just another saga of Roman decadence. It's the most harrowing case of identity theft ever recorded, where the thief didn't seize a name or riches, but an entire person's essence, surgically obliterating one life to revive another. The most chilling truth, every detail comes from official Roman chronicles. Rome, 65 AD, the world's mightiest man, has just turned murderer. Not through conquest or execution. Those were routine in the empire. No, Emperor Nero had just slain his pregnant wife, Poppaea Sabina, with his own hands in their private quarters. Some ancient whispers speak of a single, cataclysmic kick delivered with ruthless force to her delicate, swollen belly, a blow that shattered life in an instant. Others weave a darker tale of unrelenting brutality, a savage onslaught that left her crumpled, hemorrhaging on the polished, unforgiving marble floor of the imperial palace. Nero, in a sudden, heart-wrenching revelation of his irreversible deed, unleashed a primal scream for physicians, whose mortal skills stood powerless against death's inexorable claim, even for an emperor hailed as a living god. The woman who perished that fateful day was no mere imperial consort, no fleeting figure in Rome's gilded halls. Poppaea Sabina was Nero's all-consuming obsession, his divine muse, the only soul whose radiance could match the boundless grandeur of his own self-conceived divinity. Contemporary accounts, penned by awestruck scribes, exalt her with an almost celestial beauty, cascading amber tresses that shimmered under torchlight like threads of molten gold, skin so luminous it seemed to pulse with an otherworldly glow, and most strikingly, enormous, doe-like eyes, soul-piercing orbs that Roman poets, in their fervent verses, dared to compare to the divine gaze of Venus herself. Yet Nero's grief was no ordinary lament, no fleeting pang of human sorrow. When you wield dominion over an empire of 60 million souls, when you've been anointed from childhood as a scion of the gods, when the very fabric of reality bends to your imperial will, the death of your beloved is not merely loss, it is a cosmic wound, a shattering of the divine order, a defiance of the eternal, that leaves even a god trembling before the abyss. It's a personal slap from the cosmos itself. It's a limit that dares to exist when you've never acknowledged limits. Nero's reaction to Poppaea's death stunned even the hardened Roman elite. He rejected the customary cremation, instead ordering her body preserved with more exotic spices than the entire Arabian Peninsula could yield in a year. He had her remains adorned in her most opulent gowns and enshrined in a crystal sarcophagus, where he could gaze upon her. Palace staff whispered of finding the emperor, deep in conversation with her lifeless form, setting a place for her at lavish dinners, seeking her counsel on matters of the empire. The court's doctors, those bold or reckless enough to approach, tried to explain that grief could twist the mind in strange ways. But Nero wasn't just mourning, he was unraveling. Sleep eluded him without heavy doses of poppy-laced wine. He'd wake in a cold sweat, shouting Poppaea's name, swearing he heard her voice echoing from the next room. Food turned to ash in his mouth, unless it was prepared precisely to her tastes. He demanded her private quarters remain untouched, frozen in time, right down to the exact placement of her hairbrush on the vanity. But the most unsettling behavior surfaced about 2 months after her death. Nero began seeing her everywhere in the fleeting glance of a young servant girl pouring wine, in the silhouette of a senator's wife at the gladiatorial games, in the faces of courtesans in Rome's shadowy districts. He'd freeze mid-sentence during critical audiences, his gaze locked on some unsuspecting woman who faintly echoed his lost love. More than once, he startled strangers by seizing their faces, tilting them toward the torchlight, searching frantically for a spark that wasn't there. The imperial court held its collective breath, hoping this obsession would fade. Instead, it deepened. Nero ordered countless portraits and statues of Poppaea, demanding artists not merely replicate her likeness but somehow trap her very soul in their work. When they failed as mere paint and stone, inevitably would he'd erupt in fury, sometimes ordering the artist flogged, other times collapsing in tears like a broken child. Then came that pivotal moment in late 65 AD, when the world shifted. Nero was slogging through administrative appointments, a tedious chore he typically shunned, but now forced himself to endure. As a distraction from his torment, a young freedman, newly elevated to a minor bureaucratic post, stepped forward for his routine confirmation. The emperor glanced up from the endless scrolls, and time itself seemed to halt. The boy before him, barely 15, had Poppaea's eyes. It wasn't a mere likeness, captivating, dark-lashed eyes, the same delicate cheekbones, the same nervous head tilt, even the rare amber flecks in the irises glinting under oil lamps. Nero leaped from his throne, scrolls crashing to the floor. The court froze as he circled the trembling boy like a hunter. Yet beneath the predatory stare, a wild hope and manic joy more terrifying than rage lit his face. "Your name," Nero whispered. "Sporus, divine Augustus. Context matters here." Born to a Germanic captive who died in childbirth, was raised in the palace's servant quarters, educated in Greek, Latin, and rhetoric. His sharp mind and delicate features marked him for clerical work. But in that moment, he became a vessel for Nero's delusion. The emperor's scrutiny lasted minutes, feeling like eternity touching Sporus' face, tilting it, running fingers through his hair. Sporus stood frozen, sensing his life hung by a thread. Nero's smile, one scribe wrote, was that of a man who'd conquered death. "Cancel today's audiences," he commanded. "Summon my physicians. Prepare their sharpest tools." Surgery wasn't immediate. First, Nero studied Sporus, mapping how to mold him into Poppaea. Confined to lavish chambers, Sporus endured endless measurements. Artists sketched him beside Poppaea's portraits, noting every difference. Nero obsessed over these planning alterations. He trained Sporus' voice to mimic her elongated vowels, corrected his walk, his gestures. The boy's identity was erased, forbidden to use his name. Called lady, dressed in Poppaea's gowns, taught her elaborate makeup. Imagine seeing your face vanish in a bronze mirror daily. Servant, said Sporus, barely 8, moved like a ghost, yet never resisted defiance meant death. Nero openly planned the unthinkable, surgical transformation into a woman, beyond mere castration, to recreate Poppaea's form. Physicians, coerced by threats and promised riches, devised radical procedures. The night before, Nero brought Poppaea's emerald and pearl ring, sliding it onto Sporus' finger. "Tomorrow, you'll be reborn," he said. "I'll love you as I loved her." Sporus whispered, "Will it hurt?" A flicker of humanity crossed Nero's eyes, then vanished. "Birth hurts," he said, "but it's beautiful." The surgery, in a palace medical chamber, lasted hours, screams echoing despite stone walls. Nero paced outside, shouting encouragement. Recovery took months, infection a constant risk. Sporus relearned basic movements. Nero oversaw every detail, adjusting poppy doses, changing bandages, crafting his obsession, not healing a person. He read Poppaea's poetry, shared her memories. Tutors reshaped him, delicate steps, a softer voice mimicking Poppaea's. He wore replicas of her gowns, her jewelry, her perfumes. Sporus studied her life, her childhood, marriage tastes forced to recall her memories. 6 months later, at a private dinner, Sporus appeared in Poppaea's purple gown. The room fell silent. The resemblance was eerie, her smile, her tilt. Nero, beaming, called him Sabina. Guests, survivalists, praised her beauty, pretending Poppaea lived. Tacitus noted flaws: Sporus' hands too large, shoulders too broad, voice occasionally breaking. Yet glimpses of his wit and sadness shone through, quickly suppressed. Deviation: Nero's cold withdrawal or threats to replace him. In early 67 AD, Nero announced their wedding, a full Roman ritual. Preparations were meticulous: sacrifices, flowers, invitations no one dared decline. Sporus, in a bride's saffron veil, stood as Nero transferred a lavish dowry, signed contracts, and carried him over the threshold. The feast was opulent stuffed peacocks, fine wines, lavish performances. Guests gifted jewelry, household wares, even fertility charms, their smiles masking horror at this violation of nature and dignity. Yet they toasted, because defiance meant death. This story's chilling. Have you heard of this dark Roman chapter? Drop a comment and subscribe for more hidden historical truths. Otho, the next emperor, had once been married to Poppaea before Nero took her. His fascination with Sporus was thus deeply unsettling. Did he see in the transformed boy a shadow of his lost love, or a chance to defile Nero's memory? Sources suggest Otho treated Sporus as a true widow, even promising marriage, though his short reign ended before it could happen. After Otho's suicide following defeat at Bedriacum, Sporus passed to Vitellius. Here the story descends into its darkest chapter. Vitellius, a crude, gluttonous ruler, saw Sporus not as a person or prized relic, but as fodder for the mob's entertainment. Vitellius planned a horrific Colosseum spectacle. Sporus would not sit in the imperial box, but perform as Proserpina, the mythic maiden abducted by Pluto. Gladiators dressed as demons would seize him, subject him to public violation, and kill him. When Sporus learned of this, he found a strength long buried. Refusing this final degradation, he chose death on his own terms, others by opening his veins in Roman fashion. He was about 20. Sporus' tragedy raises haunting questions about identity, autonomy, and the corruption of absolute power. He was systematically broken and remade to serve Nero's delusion, his body, mind, and social existence reshaped. He became a living ghost, forced to impersonate a woman he'd never met, to love the man who destroyed him. The real Sporus's thoughts, dreams, personality before Nero's gazes, lost. Even Sporus, meaning seed or sown thing, might have been a cruel nickname for his transformation. That boy vanished, replaced by a role he played until death freed him. Historians debate whether Sporus found moments of agency. His suicide seems his one true act of self-determination. Some note small resistances, his real voice breaking through, a failed escape attempt, or his role in Nero's death, perhaps to end his own torment. Yet the complicity of so many chills most physicians who cut him, tutors who molded him, courtiers who called him Sabina, servants who dressed him daily, all chose survival over a boy's humanity. Sporus' story warns of power without conscience, where reality bends to whims. People become tools for fantasies, and societies uphold lies to appease tyrants. If this hits you hard, drop your thoughts in the comments. For more raw history, subscribe and hit the bell.